Does your gas blowback replica have trouble finishing an entire magazine with one fill of gas? This is not an uncommon issue. Many GBBs suffer with gas efficiency, but there are ways to mitigate those repercussions, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. 5 reasons that your GBB can't mag dump. Now, these are going to be very simple reasons. I've tried to keep these as simple as possible. These are the core foundation of making sure that the gas is put into the magazines correctly and that everything is functioning as it should be. So you may know one or maybe even all of the things that I'm about to mention, but I'm hoping that some of you will be able to learn something from this list today. Now, if there's something that you feel like should have been added to this list, go ahead and add it to the comment section below to help someone else. So before we get started, I have 2 disclaimers. One is if you have an enhanced recoil kit or enhanced recoil springs or heavier weight bolts, those could be causing many of your gas efficiency issues. Obviously, having heavier weight stuff means that more gas has to be expended to move those parts, which will lower your gas efficiency. I would say go ahead and try everything I'm about to mention before you remove those parts, but those could be the cause of your issue, so nothing I say helps you out. Try switching back to the original parts and see if that fixes your issues. The second disclaimer is that some GBBs are unfortunately poorly designed and poorly made, straight from the factory. This means that no matter what you do, these guns are going to perform poorly. Now, don't give up. I'm not saying just to throw these guns away or give up on them. There are companies that make third-party parts to fix these issues. And also, there are even individuals, like on eBay and whatnot, that sell 3D printed parts, which is really awesome. Love to see that. So just kind of experiment until you can get the gas efficiency that you need. So with no further ado, let's get into the 5 reasons. All right, reason number 1 is quite the doozy. It is GBBs that are not cleaned, not lubed, not polished, and not tuned. Oh, what a mouthful, I know. But there is a lot of stuff to unpack here, so let's go and get started. Let's start off with cleaning your replicas, especially if your replica is brand new or you put a new bolt in it. For example, a heavyweight bolt like this one. It's going to be leaving metal shavings for quite a long time until the parts break themselves in. So for example, running a Q-tip around in here and along some of the rails. Now, because this is a new heavyweight bolt, so there's going to be quite a bit of metal shavings in here. And just look at that. Just nasty. That's a lot of paint, metal shavings. That's going to be causing additional resistance when trying to move the bolt, which means that more gas has to be used for each shot. And in case you're not aware of how these gas blowbacks work, I have a PPQ here, for example. And the way this is going to work is when I pull the trigger, and let me see if I can get this in shot. Maybe if I try upside down. Well, I'll see afterwards if I can get a good shot of this, but just for example right now, I pull the trigger, and until the striker is reset, it is going to continue releasing gas. When the hammer and this part are down, and you can hear this click, just wait, that is pulling the striker back, and it stops expelling gas from the magazine into the nozzle. So here's an example of what's going to happen without the slide. Since the slide isn't able to move back, instead the gas is going to completely expend from the magazine. Now, of course, I don't recommend that you do this, as it will cause damage to your magazine, the O-rings and the output valve. Now, the issue, of course, is like I was saying, the more resistance there is, or the heavier the recoil spring you have, the longer it takes to move the slide back to cut off the gas release. So that's why it's so important to make sure that your gun is fully lubricated and clean to make sure that it slides as easily as possible along its rails. And for the same reason, you need to make sure that you are polishing the parts. I use Flitz polish and sandpaper, very, very fine sandpaper, and I sanded down all these parts. And even a little bit of this, but not so much here. Because you want there to be as little resistance on the rails and on the hammer as possible. Now, Don't go crazy on that, because you also don't want there to be a massive amount of movement. You still want it to be tightly held, but it should move as freely as possible. And as you break in your replica for the first few months of use, it's going to be getting better because the parts are going to mate themselves together correctly, and it will become more efficient as that happens. Like this part on the bottom here, I didn't do it quite that flat. That is just an artifact of these two parts rubbing together. So it's going to get better over time. For tuning, I kind of threw that in here. Maybe tuning is quite the right word for it, but basically what I'm referring to is, for example, on this replica, this part right here was able to move originally. So when you pull the cover down, this would come downwards and rub against the top of the bolt carrier. Obviously that is an issue, and it added a lot of resistance when the bolt moved. So I went in and modified parts of this to make sure that it didn't move as much, which will fix that issue. And as part of the whole cleaning and lubricating, make sure that you're keeping your O-rings well oiled and well lubed, because you want everything to move smoothly and you want the seal to be perfect. When I put my thumb over all these, and this seal isn't very good, it doesn't feel like, so I might have to do some work on that. But you want it to be as efficient as possible so no excess gas is escaping. And I recommend silicone oil for that because it's good for metal, plastics, rubbers, whatever. Same thing goes for whatever kind of thicker lubricant you use for the rails. Your thicker lubricant should be silicone based. Some people like other kinds of lubricants, and to each their own. I like silicone based lubricant, especially because I have the G5, which is largely a plastic gun, and things like white lithium grease will damage plastic and make it brittle. So I like silicone based lubricants, so it's safe for whatever I might have to use it on. Alright, the second reason is a missing input valve O-ring. Many magazines either do not come with an O-ring, or it falls out quickly because it's too small. If you look in this magazine, you can see what I'm talking about. Fill valve. There's a black ring around the fill valve inside of the hole. That is your input valve O-ring. Here I have a little baggie full of them. And without that O-ring, you can't obtain a perfect seal when filling the magazine. This prevents you from reaching the same amount of pressure that you would with the O-ring. And on top of that, as you're filling the magazine, the gas is constantly escaping from the canister, which means that your canister won't last as long. What I recommend is, like this bag, I buy them from Amazon in bulk. This bag, I think, costs about $9 on Amazon for a bag of 50. These work in all my GHK replicas. They're a little bit oversized, but that means that they won't come out easily once you get them in there. So I really like these, and I'm going to have a link in the description or in the comments if you're interested in trying them out for yourself. Not monetized, I just really like these and I want to share them with you. The third reason is propane or green gas tanks that are mostly empty. And I have these two propane tanks. This one is basically worthless. I'm going to have a clip showing me filling up my GHK G5 and shooting it from this empty propane tank as just a demonstration, and as you can see, is performing absolutely horrendously terrible. You can actually still feel gas moving around in this tank, but because the pressure is low, because it is almost empty, the gun can barely get off a few shots before running out of gas. And the GHK G5, and in the second clip I'm showing you with the new tank, is an extremely efficient gun. Even with just a few seconds worth of gas, it can get off 2 magazines easily. As a side note to this, the reason I'm using such an empty tank is because I wanted the effects to be very clear and obvious. Unfortunately, you'll be experiencing these kind of issues, especially FPS drops, very early on as the tank starts to empty. So keep an eye out for that and don't hold on to the same tank for too long. Now, I do like to use the empty tanks for indoor play because as long as it's able to finish an entire magazine, the FPS drop isn't so much of an issue at those ranges. And I like to use as much of the gas as possible so it's not being wasted. And we can move on directly from here to number 4, which is fill your mags inverted. And this is what I mean by that. you want to fill it with the nozzle facing downwards, not towards the sky, because propane is stored as a liquid. The liquid, and that's what you're feeling when you rotate these cans, you can feel the liquid moving around. That is what you went into your magazines, because even though the pressure will be the same regardless if you get gas propane or liquid propane into your magazine, as the gas is expended from your magazine, the liquid propane will turn into gas propane and keep the pressure high. If you only have gas propane in your magazine, it'll quickly run out, the pressure will drop, and your magazine will basically be worthless. So make sure that you're filling it inverted to maximize the efficiency. And that kind of leads into number 5. The liquid gas does not transfer instantaneously. You need to fill your magazine for more than just a second or two. For my THK M4 mags, for that G5, which you saw, could fire an entire 2 magazines from one fill of gas. It can fill for 8 to 9 seconds. And you can tell that by listening to the hiss-like sound coming from the gas can as you fill it up. So if you're having issues and you've tried everything else, try filling up your magazines for longer and try to get more of that liquid propane into your tanks. And that was our final point. So I hope you found this list to be informative and helpful. Many GBBs can be made to perform quite well when maintained and used correctly. It is quite complicated how the gas interacts with the magazines, so hopefully you have gained some knowledge from this video to help you understand how that's functioning. Now I know that these tips were very, very simple for some of you, but I'm really hoping that this will help others to understand what is going on with their gas efficiency in their replicas. Remember, if you have any tips of your own, just go and throw those down in the comments, or if you have any questions, throw those down in the comments too. I'll try to answer them as quickly as possible. And until the next video, stay safe, guys.